Hey, and welcome to another Flying Solo review with your host, Bubba Washington. Today I'm reviewing Clank, a deck-building adventure game designed by Paul Dennen and published by Renegade Games Studios. Let's see how well this game plays solo. Now, if you're looking at the box and say, wait a second, there's a mistake going on here. This game's for 2 to 4 players. I don't want to hear about no silly made-up solo variant by a fan. Well, if you're in luck, today Renegade Game Labs actually has an official solo app for this game, and we're going to review that today. Alright, let's talk about how you set up a single-player game for Clank. Now, Clank is to set up a single-player game is very similar to how you set up a 2-player game. And when you look at the app, it'll tell you how to. There's a couple things you need to do, and I'll show you real quickly what these things are to do. I'll also post little screenshots of in the video about what the app's telling you. The first thing you're going to want to do is it's going to tell you to remove 2 treasures. And at this point right here, we've seen that we've removed the treasure that's worth 10 points and the treasure that's worth 20 points. And these are randomly selected by the app at first. The second thing it's going to tell you to do is that there's little spots on the board for little minor question marks. Little minor treasures you're going to find throughout. Normally in a room with minor treasures, there's 2 of these on the board. Well, within the solo variant, there's only 1. So each little space will have 1 question mark. So half of those minor treasures won't be used. Now, that's pretty much all it is for the tokens and everything that you'll have to set up. The rest of them are normal. You'll have your large tokens in the appropriate rooms and whatnot. Now, at the beginning of the game, you'll also lay out. We'll say that I'm the green player. We'll lay out 3 Clank for me because I'm the starting player, but also for the computer player, or not necessarily the computer player, but the player that the app is trying to represent with its choices and all. You'll set out 3 Clank cubes as well. You'll start in the beginning of the dungeon up here. Now, your pawn is the only pawn that's going to move throughout the dungeon. This is just here for end game when you eventually get to the end game, and I'll explain how that works after I go over how Clank is played. So, Clank is a deck builder game, and usually you start off with a game. Deck of 10 cards, and everybody starts off with the same cards. There's 6 of these burglar cards, 2 of these stumble cards, and 1 of the scramble cards, and a sidestep card. Now, you'll notice like on the burglar cards, they have a blue diamond. That's a skill point, and the skill points are used as money to purchase additional cards down here in the very bottom row. The cards that have a foot right here in this yellow icon, they're also used for movement. So the more of these feet you have, the more rooms you can move through as you're going through your way through the dungeon. Now, some of the cards, they'll have a negative ability on them. Like the stumble card is as you're moving through the dungeon, you're stumbling around, and you're making a lot of noise, and you have to increase the number of Clank that go in the pool up there. And that's pretty important because when the dragon attacks phase comes out, you'll have to take whatever's up in that pool and put it in the bag. And the more of your cubes are in there, the potential it is that you'll draw them out. So let's just go ahead and look at our starting hand. And right here you can see that I have 2 movement and 2 resources and 2 stumble. So we have to play our stumble. You can play them in any order. But like I said, it doesn't really give us an advantage to play them first or last or whatever. So let's go ahead and play them now and get them out of the way. We'll add 2 Clank to the board and pick up the card we dropped. Alright, and then we have 2 movement left and 2 resources. And we can move our pawn throughout to the first room and down into the second room. And we have resources that allows us to purchase a card down here on the bottom row if we'd like. Down here in the corner indicates how much you can purchase for. Like this one, for example, the Rebel Miner allows us to purchase it for 2. And it gives us a victory point at the end indicated by this number in the green circle. And it also lets us know that when we bring this card out into our deck, we'll gain 2 gold if we play this card along with an additional companion card. Now let's talk about the cards that you'll find down here that you're able to purchase. You're able to purchase from this bottom row. There are 3 types of cards that you'll see in here. These blue ones right here are your companion cards, and sometimes there are pieces of equipment or something like that, and they give you some kind of bonus. So the key important thing to remember about the blue cards are they go in your deck, and you'll constantly be drawing them and using their ability. The purple cards, like this teleporter right here, is a one-time use card. Once you use it, it's gone. And the third type of card that comes up is the monster cards, and they are indicated by the red banner at the top, and also they have little sword symbols down here about what it takes to be able to beat those. Now you have to have a card with sword symbols in your deck, and you'll notice that from our beginning setup we did not have any cards that had any sword setup. So in order to get those, we have cards along this row, this side of the board, that are always available to be purchased. Because there could be a chance where these cards are wiped out as people purchase them, they get replaced and whatnot. These cards are good to go until they completely run out. So the first one we have is the Mercenary. Costs 2, gives us a skill point, and he also provides us with 2 swords. Second type is the Explorer. Gives us 2 skill points and a movement, and it costs 3 skill points to purchase. And the last is just essentially a victory point card. Costs 7, and it's worth 7 at the end of the game. Now there's a special card up here at the very top that at any time we have like we've drawn a bunch of swords and we don't know what to do, we can always fight a goblin if there's no monsters down in the bottom row that we want to fight. And when we fight a goblin, it gives us 1 gold. Now the gold is slightly different currency in the game as opposed to skill points. And the gold, for what it's worth at the end of the game, is worth 1 point. So for every gold you have, it's worth 1 point. But that's not true for skill points. So when you have a deck full of skill points, they're not going to be worth any money or victory points at the end. However, the gold, when you go down to one of these market squares, indicated on the first side of the board, they're all clumped in the little four area right here, but on the other side of the board, they're kind of spread out. You have the chance to spend 7 of your gold for additional upgrades. And the additional upgrades could be additional treasure tokens, like these crowns. And some of the cards in this row right here will come up making references to crowns and jewels and stuff like that. So at some times it might be advantageous to purchase that. But also another aspect is you can purchase a key. And I'll get to this in a second, but on the board there's little areas that you're trying to move through that have little keys that are blocked unless you have a key to get through it. And the last thing you can purchase is a backpack. Because normally when you go down here to retrieve an artifact and pull it out of the dungeon, you can only carry 1. But if you're able to purchase a backpack, you can carry 2. So we'll go back up to where we were. All right, and so the game continues, and the way it works in a single-player version is that you'll take a turn, and when you're in, you'll have a certain quest that are laid out in the app. The quest might be generate a hand with 3 skill resources, or it might say generate a hand with 4 sword resources, or take out one of these cards down here, such as like either purchase it, or if it's a monster, take it out, and it'll give you a certain number of turns. Like it'll say you got to do it in 3 turns, and if you fail, something negative happened to you, like you might lose some gold, or you might have to put some more cubes in the Clank up here, or just various different negative effects throughout the game. They're not too devastating, but they can be annoying. And sometimes, if you succeed though, before the turn's up, you'll be able to gain some kind of benefit, whether it might actually be removing cubes from the Clank, or either having to put more cubes in for your opponent into the Clank, or gaining some extra resources or whatnot. Now that's how that works. Now you'll notice that this card right here has a dragon symbol down here in this corner, and what that means is when normally in the setup it wouldn't come out here like this. But like say for instance, we purchased this 5th card and we had to refill it. And when the dragon came out, this is when we would have to attack. I forgot to do this at setup, but in like I said, a solo adventure, the dragon starts on the 2-player thing. But anyways, when the dragon comes up, it would move up a point along the rage track, and indicating how many cubes we would have to pull out the bag. So we take the bag, and inside the bag here, there are 24 black cubes that represent the dragon. And we would just take all the cubes of ours and our opponents and throw them in here. So we would shake up the bag and pull out, the necessary number of cubes. Now we had to draw 3, so we drew one more than we needed. So we'll just throw that in there. Okay. So as you can see here, we drew a black cube, and we drew a green cube, and we drew a red cube. And this is perfect for this example. So the black cube, that represents the dragon, it goes out. So that means there's less of a chance you'll draw dragon cubes, and those don't do anything. So the more black cubes that come out, the higher the chances that your cubes will come out. So when your cube does come out, it goes on the threat track down here, and you start with 10, and this is essentially your life. And as you fill this up and get to 0, you die. However, in the solo variant, this is actually an interesting way that they keep track of the player that you're trying to race against. And when instead of them dying when they get down to 10, when they get to 10, they actually trigger the end game. Now, before we get into the end game, I did skip over how these cards work. So when it's my turn and I'm able to purchase any of the cards, I'm going to be able to purchase this one, and I can purchase, and I've killed this monster right here. Assuming I update the app in the situation where it says I completed the quest or maybe I failed. What would happen then is I take the consequence or the reward for the quest, the quest. And then what would happen is I'd have to refill this roll. And the way you refill it is you just take it, and any dragon icons will come up means they're going to initiate a dragon attack. Now, it doesn't matter how many come out after this, as long as one of them came out, the rest, we're still going to attack one time. So we'd go through that whole process of throwing cubes in there and pulling them out and whatnot. Anyways, okay, so let's get to the point where we got to the end. So say I'm down here and I'm pulling out some treasure. I've got my treasure and I'm trying to make my way back up the map. And my opponent has triggered the end. Well, they'll go along here at the very top, and there's 5 spaces to indicate where they need to come out at. So as my turn, I'm trying to slowly move my way back up through the maze of the dungeon to get up here, and they're slowly moving along this track. And each time they move, anytime the dragon would be forced to attack, they add an additional cube here, then 2 cubes and 3 cubes. And if they make it to the 4th or the final spot before I get out, I've died inside the dungeon. If I'm able to make it out before then, I would get a bonus victory points. There's a bonus 20-point tile that you get for making it, down in the dungeon, grab something and you go. So it's kind of a press your luck game where it's like, how far do I want to go in there before, risk going and getting stuck? Because the way the game works is that the board's split in half, and you can see, if you're looking at the board, there's a green kind of grassy area right here on the landscape that would indicate the surface. And if you're below the surface in the depths of the dungeon and you happen to die, that's it. Your score, you're 0. You don't get to count your score. It's over. If you end up in the top part here, above the ground, inside the castle area, and you end up dying, you still can count your score. Your score is not going to be as good because you didn't get the 20-point bonus for getting out. But nonetheless, you may or may not be able, in a multiplayer game, you may be able to beat some people or you may not. It's a very tough game. It's very, depending on how much you want to push your luck. So I've seen people who died in the dungeon up here and still won the game. So the way that works in a solo variant is you're trying to get the highest score possible and essentially just say, well, I scored a 60 in my first game, now see if I can do a 75 or an 80 or something like that. And you just play as normal, and that's how you set up Clank for a solo variant and how it. All right, here's my final thoughts about this game. I absolutely love this game. This game is a great example how the deck building mechanic can be used other than, just building a deck and trying to generate an engine to be able to score points. This is a unique way of, you're building your deck, trying to move through the dungeon with movement cards. You're also building into your deck fight cards to be able to also fight your way out of the dungeon, or also fight monsters in that row down at the very bottom where you're trying to gain better cards and stuff like that. Like I said, this deck building, the way they've used this mechanic is probably by far my favorite use of the deck building mechanic that I've seen in a game. Now, this game plays amazing multiplayer, but it also plays amazing single player, and I am very surprised by that. I don't know how long Renegade spent in development with trying to include this single player variant, and I'm glad they did. I'm glad they came out with their app to actually do the randomization of how to simulate like you're playing against an additional player. But if you've seen my review about Harbor, I wasn't too impressed with the way a tacked on single player gets tacked onto a game that's not really designed for it. So like I said, I don't know if it was intentionally, a single player game in the beginning, or this is something that came up later on. But Renegade and Paul Dennen did an awesome job of pulling this off. Now, I will complain about the app, only because I'm an old curmudgeon that doesn't like to spend all day at my job while staring at a computer and then having to come home and stare at an app to play a game. But that's just a minor quibble, and I hope within an expansion or something that Renegade says, you know what, we can basically simulate the app with a deck of cards, because all it is just randomly a random setup from the beginning of like which tokens do you remove. Also, is you play the game and you interact with it. There's different ways it randomly rewards you and stuff like that. And I think that could be done with a deck of cards. I mean, it doesn't have to be a big deck, and that's just a small thing. And then that's me personally. Some people might argue along the fact that, hey, 15 years from now, and I have the latest and greatest iPhone or whatever, iPhone 50 or something like that, is it going to support the app? If Renegade Game Studios is not developing this app, for the last 5 years, what's to say it's going to support this stuff? And yeah, I get it, whatever. But like I said, I think if you're really dedicated to this game and you keep it along for that long and you're really concerned about an app, you could probably make up your own 30-card deck to get by with the randomization. And if not, maybe you play the game out by then. Anyways, like I said, this game is phenomenal. And the deck building mechanic is phenomenal. That's one of my favorite mechanics in gaming at all. And I'm glad to see this was used in a unique, creative way of moving through the dungeon. Like I said, I highly recommend this game, both multiplayer and especially solo play. I love the way the end game is triggered in this game. So as far as when you're pulling out the cubes for the threat and you're worried about dying, you're also worried about not your opponent dying, but triggering that end game. So this, like I said, this game simulates the multiplayer experience phenomenally. So if you haven't picked this up yet and you're thinking about, hey man, will I get a chance to play this game with my friends? If not, you're still going to love the game solo. So like I said, get this game if you really want a unique deck building experience that's going to give you a push your luck aspect, and also give you that tense feel like you're trying to outrace this big dragon coming at you. Hey, I'm Bubba Washington, and thanks for watching my review of Clank. If you enjoyed this video, then give it a thumbs up. Also, subscribe to my channel to keep up to date with the latest solo board game reviews I release. I release every Friday, so tune in next Friday and you'll have a new review. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and leave a comment below. If there's a game you'd like me to review in the future, also leave that down in the comments too. If you can find out more where to contact me on the web in the description below in this video. Thanks again for watching.